Toy Story, one of the best-loved movies of all time. In this episode, you'll learn how Toy Story was created. It's filled with surprises, with twists and turns. It's almost as interesting as the movie itself. Stay tuned to learn the creation story of Toy Story. Welcome to the Science of Creativity, your home for insights and inspiration about art, design, and invention. I'm your host, Dr. Keith Sawyer. My mission is to inspire you with stories of brilliant creators and world-changing inventions. You'll learn about the latest psychological studies and gain insights about creativity that will help you reach your full creative potential. Pixar was the digital animation studio responsible for Toy Story. We know them now as an incredibly successful company with many famous digitally animated movies under their belt. But back in 1994, they really weren't doing very well at all. They were losing money every year. The owner was Steve Jobs of Apple fame, and he'd put $50 million into the company. He was trying to sell it because it was losing so much money. He was willing to take $50 million. That was just enough for him not to lose money. No one was interested. He eventually even approached Microsoft, and Microsoft was famously the nemesis of Steve Jobs' company, Apple. Eventually, Pixar got a deal with Disney to make a movie, but they weren't able to negotiate for very much because they were in a position of weakness. They weren't making any money. It looked like they were only going to get $20 million or so from the movie, but it turned out to be an incredible success. It was released on 2,400 theater screens, and critics loved it. Janet Maslin of the New York Times said it was utterly brilliant anthropomorphism. I love that word, anthropomorphism. Say it again. And she also said it was exultant wit. Time magazine said it was the year's most inventive comedy. Siskel and Ebert awarded it 2 thumbs up. It was released the day before Thanksgiving, which of course is on a Thursday, and by the weekend, it had already made $10 million. Over the 3-day weekend, it made another $28 million. And then in the first 12 days, it made $64.7 million. It ended up being the highest grossing movie of 1995, with $192 million in the U.S. and $357 million globally. It was nominated for an Academy Award. It turned out to be an incredible success for Pixar, for Disney, and it turned out to be a great investment for Steve Jobs. Good thing that he couldn't find a buyer, right? Supplies of toys that were themed from the movie sold out overnight. Even Hasbro, which was the maker of Mr. Potato Head, which was voiced by Don Rickles in the movie, Hasbro joked that they had a, quote, potato famine because they ran out of Mr. Potato Heads. Steve Jobs still owned 80% of the company, and his share was now valued at $1.1 billion. That was soon after the movie came out. Toy Story is a brilliant example of creative success. It's a success of the Pixar studios and the animators who worked there. And it was a big success for investor Steve Jobs. It's truly a story of exceptional creativity. So what made the movie so successful? How was it created? The true story of Toy Story is a story of wandering, improvisational, surprising creativity. In the next 5 minutes, I'm going to summarize the plot. I've included some of your favorite clips of dialogue. If you're a big fan, you're going to enjoy this summary. But if you like, you can skip over the plot summary and go straight to the next chapter of this episode, which is called The Surprises. The original script treatment had almost nothing in common with the plot. You're going to hear about 13 different surprises, 13 twists and turns. These eventually led to the plot that we know and love. But first, here's the plot. The plot seems like it came from a burst of inspiration, from a brilliant storyteller. After all, the plot seems to flow naturally from the premise. It's the classic buddy movie structure, where you start with 2 characters who are very different from each other, and they don't get along at all. Then they get placed into a situation where they face a series of challenges, and they have to learn to work together to get over the challenges. By the end of the narrative, they have become close, maybe even good friends. That's the buddy movie narrative structure. And maybe it was a brilliant storyteller who came up with this idea. We're going to do a buddy movie about toys. Well, the creative process really couldn't be more different. It was not due to a burst of inspiration, and it was not a linear path from some storyteller's idea to the movie that we know and love. Here's the plot. The two lead characters, they meet each other in the bedroom of a little boy named Andy. Andy has a lot of toys. The toys are still and silent whenever Andy is in the room. But when he leaves, they come to life. They talk, they have personalities, they have relationships. Andy's favorite toy is a wooden cowboy doll named, appropriately, Woody. It turns out that when Andy leaves and the toys come to life, Woody is the leader of the band of toys. In the opening of the movie, Andy is celebrating his birthday, and his favorite present is a new toy. It's an action figure of a spaceman named Buzz Lightyear.
I'm Buzz Lightyear, Space Ranger, Universe Protection Unit.
When Andy leaves, Buzz comes to life, along with all of the other toys. Well, Buzz is a little bit lost at first. It's as if he just woke up from a dream. He starts to enact the role that's on the box that he came in. So now he's lost on a strange new planet. He's trying to figure out where he is.
And there seems to be no sign of intelligent life anywhere.
Hello?
Oh, yeah!
Ah! Whoa! Hey, whoa. Did I frighten you? Didn't mean to. Sorry. Howdy. My name is Woody, and this is Andy's room.
Woody gets jealous of Buzz right away, and Buzz and Woody don't get along very well at first.
Listen, light snack. You stay away from Andy. He's mine, and no one is taking him away from me.
What are you talking about? Where's that bonding strip?
And another thing, stop with this spaceman thing. It's getting on my nerves.
Are you saying you want to lodge a complaint with Star Command?
Oh, okay. Ooh, well, so you want to do it the hard way, huh?
Don't even think about it, cowboy.
Oh, yeah? Tough guy?
Then we learn that the family is packing for a move to a new house. The family takes a break from packing and they go to Andy's favorite restaurant, which is called the Pizza Planet. While they're on the trip to the pizza restaurant, they decide to stop at the gas station to fill up their car. Woody and Buzz get into a fight when the family steps out of the car.
According to my Nava computer,
Shut up! Just shut up, you idiot!
Sheriff, this is no time to panic.
This is the perfect time to panic. I'm lost. Andy is gone. They're going to move from their house in 2 days, and it's all your fault.
My fault? If you hadn't pushed me out of the window in the first place.
Oh, yeah. Well, if you hadn't shown up your stupid little cardboard spaceship and taken away everything that was important to me.
Don't talk to me about importance. Because of you, the security of this entire universe is in jeopardy.
What? What are you talking about?
During the fight, they fall out of the car, and no one notices. So the car drives off, and the two toys get left behind. They go through a series of adventures and challenges to find their way back to Andy's house. They have to face off against Andy's mean neighbor, Sid Phillips, and his evil dog, Scud. By the end of the movie, they have overcome their differences and they work together as a team. They're finally reunited with the other toys.
Oh, boy, am I glad to see you guys!
I knew you'd come back, Woody.
Andy comes back to play with the toys and he finds Buzz and Woody. The mother says, "See, they were in the car the whole time."
Hey, wow!
What is it?
Woody! Buzz!
Oh, great, you found them. Where were they?
Here in the car!
See? Now, what'd I tell you? Right where you left them.
Andy plays with his toys and they live happily ever after.
To infinity and beyond!
This is the plot we know and love. It works so well, it is brilliantly written. We often think that scripts and plots are generated by uniquely gifted writers. They're people who have a special creative vision. And especially when the plot works so well, when it's skillfully crafted, it gives us the impression that it came fully formed in the mind of a lone genius. But the Toy Story plot did not come from a burst of inspiration. Here's how it really happened. The original treatment for Toy Story, which was written by John Lasseter, Andrew Stanton, and Pete Docter, it had almost nothing in common with the movie that we know and love. I'm going to tell you about 13 different moments when the script of the movie changed dramatically. 13 zigs and zags. Let's follow the zigs and zags of the creative journey that led to Toy Story. For each of these zigs and zags, you're going to hear a swoosh sound. The first draft was ready in March 1991. It had two main characters, a one-man band named Tinny and a ventriloquist dummy. The movie starts with Tinny waking up in his factory, and then he is given as a birthday gift to a young boy. The boy's family goes on a road trip to the Southwest. They take Tinny along, but early in the trip, he gets forgotten and left behind at a gas station. While at the gas station, wondering what he should do, he meets the ventriloquist dummy. They work together to find their way back to Tinny's home. In a series of adventures, the two travel from the back of a truck to an auction, to a garbage truck, to a yard sale, a couple's house, finally to a kindergarten playground. That's the happy ending in which the toys are reunited with the children. Pretty much the only plot element that made it into the final movie was a toy getting left behind at a gas station. Other bits and pieces zigged and zagged into the final movie. For example, a slinky caterpillar in the original treatment gradually evolved into a slinky dog in the final film. Another example is that in both the original treatment and in the final film, there's a threatening pet dog that the toys have to escape from. A third example of a script element that remained is that one of the main toys is given as a birthday present. After this initial treatment, Jeffrey Katzenberg of Disney told Pixar to rewrite Toy Story as more of an odd couple buddy movie. Like the older movie, The Defiant Ones, about two men thrown together by circumstance and forced to cooperate even though they hated each other. So, in September 1991, the Pixar team came back with a second treatment. This time, Tinny and the dummy were still the main characters, but there'd been a lot of changes. Tinny was no longer born in the factory. He was born as he was unwrapped. In the original script, the ventriloquist dummy first appeared at the gas station. In the new script, he was already in the house, and he was the children's favorite toy. The dummy became jealous of the shiny new Tinny, and they started to argue with each other. Instead of a vacation to the Southwest, the family was now moving to a new town, and after a hard day of packing, they went out for pizza. The favorite toys went along for the ride, but they fell out of the car at the gas station and got left behind. Eventually, they made it back home, but the moving van was just leaving for their new town. Tinny and the dummy were deterred by a vicious dog, but then all of the toys helped rescue Tinny from the dog, and Tinny and the dummy were happily reunited with the family. The next change in direction came when Lasseter decided that Tinny was too old-fashioned. Remember that Tinny was a one-man band. In the 1990s, how many people had ever seen one of those? So Pixar replaced Tinny with a G.I. Joe type action figure. Then Tinny was changed into a space hero, something like the 1960s toy Major Mason. They named the space hero Lunar Larry. His name was changed again to Tempest from Morph, and his outfit was changed into a bright red spacesuit. A buddy movie plot needs two different characters. They have to be really different from each other. So the ventriloquist dummy was changed into a cowboy figure. It was something more old-fashioned, and the idea was that it would contrast with the futuristic spaceman. Now the dummy cowboy was named Woody. I always thought that was because he was made of wood. I think that's half true, but the name actually came from an African-American character who was in several classic westerns done by John Ford and Sergio Leone. In June 1992, Pixar took these two characters, Woody and Tempest, and they prepared a 30-second test video and showed it to Disney. This 30-second scene took place on a chest of drawers in Andy's bedroom. Woody tricked Tempest into falling behind the chest and getting stuck there. Now remember, this was over a year from when they first started working on this, back in March of 1991. Disney said no to the ventriloquist dummy character. They were worried that parents and children would find it creepy and scary. After all, a lot of horror movies use the ventriloquist dummy as an evil and dangerous character. So Woody was changed into a stuffed toy with a pull string. John Lasseter at Pixar got the idea from a toy he had had in his childhood. It was a Casper the Friendly Ghost doll with a pull string. Tempest was renamed Buzz Lightyear. He started out as a very small toy, so then Pixar decided to make him bigger so that he was the same size as Woody. After all, they were going to be fighting. It wouldn't really be believable if Buzz were a lot smaller. Pixar still wanted G.I. Joe in the movie, even though he was no longer going to be one of the two lead characters. But Hasbro had the rights to G.I. Joe, and they refused to license the rights. I really don't know why, but they were willing to grant permission for another one of their toys, Mr. Potato Head, and then he was voiced by the legendary comedian Don Rickles. The writers decided that Woody and Buzz would be rescued from Sid's house by Barbie in a commando-style raid, patterned after Sarah Connor in Terminator 2. This idea was dropped when Mattel refused to license the rights to Barbie. Go figure. Pixar had chosen Tom Hanks to play Woody, and they wanted Billy Crystal to play Buzz, but Crystal turned down the part. The next choice was Tim Allen. He was the star of a TV show called Home Improvement. The directors had wanted Buzz to be a self-important, almost an arrogant character, and they'd written the script with Billy Crystal's voice in mind. He would have voiced this personality brilliantly. But at the first script reading, Allen's voice made Buzz sound like a friendly, ordinary guy. It was a noticeable clash with the scripted lines of dialogue for Billy Crystal. The directors decided that they actually liked that personality, that version of Buzz, even better. So then they rewrote the script completely to make those lines work with the new character's personality. In November 1993, this back-and-forth journey culminated in yet another rejection by Disney. The biggest problem now was that Woody was too unlikable. An earlier scene had him abusing the Slinky Dog, and another one had him pushing Buzz out of the window. So Pixar rewrote the script to make Woody more sympathetic. For example, instead of pushing Buzz out the window, Buzz fell by accident. Finally, in February of 1994, 3 years after the original treatment, Disney gave the green light. Production would start that April. This had been an incredible creative journey, a journey filled with twists and turns, a journey filled with surprises. Of course, there's surprises to us, the viewers and the fans, but it's important to keep in mind that these were surprises to the creators as well. They didn't know ahead of time where the movie would go. But these people at Pixar, they're professional creatives. They know that an effective creative process is wandering and that things change along the way. In fact, this is what made the movie so successful, not because the original script was brilliant, but because Pixar was so skillful at working their way through the creative process. In creativity research, the most common theory of how creativity happens is the linear creativity theory. This means that the creative process flows straight from start to finish. It starts with an insight, a big idea, and then it flows from the beginning to the end where you generate your final creative product. The most widely known linear model of this creative process has 5 stages that you go through from beginning to end. Well, the first stage happens before you have the idea. That's called preparation. You need to know a lot about a field before you can have good ideas. So the creator studies the history of the field, prior works, concepts, ideas related to his or her field. And that preparation is essential. You can't have creative ideas unless you know a lot about your domain or your discipline. And then once you have filled your mind with all of this information from your domain, from your field, you take some time off. And what happens is you go through what's called incubation. That's where you take time off from the work and you're not actively thinking about it. That gives you a chance to allow ideas to potentially emerge from your subconscious mind. So what's happening is that all that material you put into your mind during your preparation stage is now bouncing around in your subconscious, and the ideas are potentially connecting with each other. And that's what creative ideas are. After all, they're connections of existing ideas. So that incubation is a subconscious process. That's the second stage of the linear insight model. Then the third stage is ideation or insight. That's what you want, right? That's when you have a new idea or a good idea. What happens is that some of that cognitive material in your mind during incubation comes together in such a way that it has a power that causes it to pop out of your subconscious mind into your conscious mind. And you have this subjective sensation of insight. The fourth stage is a stage of selection, and that's a more conscious stage because a lot of these insights or ideas that you have turn out not to be so great once you examine them a little bit more closely. And effective creators have lots and lots of ideas. It's what we call ideational fluency or divergent thinking. You can't pursue all of those ideas. In the selection stage, a creator looks at all those ideas that have come into the conscious mind through insight and through this incubation stage, and you evaluate which ones are going to be the best ones to pursue. So you pick one, and then in the fifth stage, that's what's called execution, where you develop that selected idea. You use the various established practices of your discipline, the methodologies, and you bring that idea to a point where the work has an impact, where it can be publicly shared. So this is a common model of the linear process of creativity, the 5 stages, going from preparation, incubation, ideation, selection, and execution. The linear insight theory of creativity is pretty good at explaining a lot of insights, a lot of ideas, and you'll read a lot of stories about creativity as emerging from this time off, from this incubation, and then having a moment of insight. But the linear theory of creativity isn't very effective at explaining certain types of creativity. In particular, it's not very effective at explaining the Pixar story, the process that led to Toy Story, because the Toy Story process was not linear. It went through the zigzagging, wandering, improvisational process. It didn't go through a step from incubation to having a moment of insight to selecting the best idea and then executing the idea. That's the take-home message of the Toy Story creation story, is that it did not come from a brilliant idea at the beginning. There was not a script that was developed by a particularly creative writer, and then the script was linearly turned into the movie. That's not what happened. What happened was a very early idea for a script that then completely changed as you go through the process. So a lot of research shows that these linear theories of creativity often are inadequate to explain the creative process. A lot of real-world creativity has this kind of linear, improvisational, zigzagging process. And what happens is, in that case, that the creative process unfolds unpredictably. Creativity emerges from a wandering, exploratory process. Unexpected ideas slowly advance the process. This meandering path leads down many dead ends. This is why successful creators so often talk about the importance of frequent failure, right? So you have dead ends, you have a lot of ideas, not all of them are going to be good ideas. In a linear model, you would just select the best idea and then you work on it. But in this zigzagging improvisational process, you have dead ends all the time. And then you have to restart, you go in a different direction. So this is the nature of frequent failure. And I like to use this term zigzag to characterize this type of creative process, the improvisational type of creative process. It's like a zigzagging line which takes sudden turns and often shifts direction. If you're involved with business or entrepreneurship, you might have heard the term pivot to describe a shift in direction where you're taking one path to solve a business problem and then you're aware to what's going on in the business environment and you realize, let's say from listening to customers, that you're going in the wrong direction and you have to pivot and change direction. And that's absolutely contributing to effective creativity and entrepreneurship. But the word pivot makes it sound like all you need is one major transition. But in reality, successful creativity involves constant, frequent shifts in direction. I like to use this term zigzag because of these frequent shifts in direction. It's not just one pivot. You're changing all the time. And these changes are very small. They're very tiny. You go through them maybe daily, maybe weekly, like we saw in the Pixar Toy Story creation story, lots and lots of changes of direction. So creativity research shows that a lot of successful creativity isn't based in moments of big, sudden insight. Creativity is not the result of special individuals having great ideas. It's the result of this wandering process where you have lots of small ideas over time. I call them small sparks as opposed to big insights. And then what happens when you think about creativity using this model of small sparks, you can see how collaboration drives creativity, because now you have more than one person who can come up with these small ideas that if you come together in an effective way, the small ideas build together over time. More people can have more small ideas. You don't have to pick one idea from 1 billion person and then all work in it together. So what you have in this case is an improvisational creative process, which is a collaborative process, which is driven by social networks. And this type of improvisational creativity, it's not always about individuals. It's a social process. The first lesson for all of us is that we should not expect creativity to flow from having a great idea. It doesn't work that way. If that's your conception of creativity, then you'll be sitting there waiting for a big insight. And when it doesn't come to you, like most cases it doesn't, you'll think that you're not creative and you'll be frustrated. Of course you are creative, but the creativity comes from the small ideas, these small sparks, and the hard work of bringing together lots of different small ideas over time to make something great. The second lesson for all of this is that the creative process isn't linear. What you end up with won't be the same thing you start with. Just like with Toy Story, the original script treatment was almost completely different from the movie that we know and love. I've interviewed a lot of successful creators, and they tell me that if you end up with what you started with, it probably won't be very creative. And something even more interesting that they tell me that if you go through this linear process where all you do is execute the idea you already had, they say that's not fulfilling. They don't get into the flow state. And think about it, all you're doing is executing an idea you already had, and then you're not surprised at what comes out at the end. Creators say that it's more fulfilling to be surprised, and then you have unexpected things emerge. This type of emergence happens from an improvisational process where you continue your creative work every day. Creativity is a daily practice. Creativity is a set of habits of mind that drive you through this daily practice. The way to be more creative is always to keep working, to keep doing the work. You're always generating small ideas over time. When you do that, creativity will follow. I love the creation story of Toy Story because it so powerfully demonstrates the true nature of the creative process. First of all, your first idea doesn't have to be a great one. As you go through the creative process, your idea will be substantially modified. You might even end up dropping it altogether in favor of a better idea that comes along. But the first idea is necessary to get the journey started. Second, don't worry if you can't tell exactly where you are in the process. You won't know how close you are to the final goal. Trust in the process to lead you to successful creativity. The message is that creativity doesn't come from billion ideas suddenly coming to unique creative people. It's not people who are creative, it's the process that is creative. It's a process that's iterative, exploratory, filled with dead ends, it's improvisational, and it's collaborative. The way to be more creative, the way to contribute to the world, is to learn how to engage in this zigzagging process, to learn to trust that the process will lead you to something great, the same process that is responsible for Toy Story. Thank you for listening to The Science of Creativity. If you liked this episode, I hope you'll subscribe to the podcast, and please rate the show because that helps others like you hear about the show. Please write in the comments if you have requests or ideas for future episodes. I'll see you next time on The Science of Creativity for insights and inspiration about art, design, and invention.